Good morning. There's a little bit of a breeze, and the birds are very noisy, but thank you for being with me. I appreciate you. I've only got a couple of videos left of this book, The Western Women's Reader. Our next lady here on page 549 is Gloria Anzaldúa. Anzaldua. Born in 1942. I can hear my voice is not awake yet, so I will read my voice awake this morning. The light is falling, something beautiful on the bark of the trees this morning. It's pretty on multiple sides here. All right. Born in the ranching community of Jesus Maria of the Valley of South Texas, Gloria Anzaldúa was a member of the 7th generation of her family, born in Texas. When she was 11 years old, her family left the ranch for Hargill, Texas, which she later described as having 1 signal light and 13 bars and 13 churches and maybe 2 mini marts. For 1 year following her father's death when she was 16, Anzaldúa and her remaining family became migrant farm laborers, traveling throughout Texas and Arkansas, following the harvests. Fearful that her sons would miss their chance for an education if they continued as migrant workers, Anzaldúa's mother returned to Jesus Maria of the Valley of South Texas and settled there. After graduating from high school, Gloria went on to earn a BA from Pan American University in 1969, in an MA in English and Education from the University of Texas at Austin in 1972. One of the Canadian geese has misbehaved. The other ones have chastised that one. That's what that commotion there was. Alright, let me continue here. An MA in English and Education from the University of Texas at Austin in 1972. In the years since, in addition to continuing in the PhD program in the history of consciousness at the University of California at Santa Cruz, she has written Borderlands / La Frontera, California at Santa Cruz. She has written Borderlands La Frontera, The New Mestiza, Mestiza, 1987, and edited 2 anthologies of writings by women of color. This bridge called My Back, Writings by Radical Women of Color, 1981, with Sherry Moraga, and Making Face, Making Soul, Haciendo Caras, Creative and Critical Perspectives by Women of Color, 1990. Gloria became a writer despite discouraging expectations she faced as a Chicana. As she writes, good Chicanitas don't go to school, they drop out in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and cook, clean, and sew. Gloria refused to behave in this way, defending her thirst for knowledge against criticism that reading instead of scrubbing floors was a mark of laziness. Gloria's openness about being a lesbian clashed with her mother's homophobia and made more difficult Gloria's acceptance into her Chicana community. In the book from which this selection is drawn, Borderlands La Frontera, The New Metza, Gloria addresses the formation of a new consciousness, which she terms Metza, out of the radical ideology, cultural, and biological cross-pollination, which takes place in the borderlands. All right, we continue. Titled Borderlands. In the 1800s, Anglos migrated illegally into Texas, which was then part of Mexico. In greater and greater numbers, and gradually drove the Tejanos, native Texans of Mexican descent, the Tejanos, from their lands, committing all manner of atrocities against them. Their illegal invasion forced Mexico to fight a war to keep its Texas territory. The Battle of the Alamo, in which the Mexican forces vanquished the whites, became, for the whites, the symbol for the cowardly and villainous characters of the Mexicans. It became, and still is, a symbol that legitimized the white imperialist takeover. Excuse me. Phew. The Battle of the Alamo, in which the Mexican forces vanquished the whites, became, for the whites, the symbol for the cowardly and villainous character of the Mexicans. It became, and still is, a symbol that legitimized the white imperialist takeover. With the capture of Santa Anna later in 1836, Texas became a republic. Tejanos lost their land and overnight became the foreigners. There's something written here, but it is from the Mexican Corredor del Pilagro de la Intervención. In 1846, the U.S. incited Mexico to war. U.S. troops invaded and occupied Mexico, forcing her to give up almost half of her nation, what is now Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado, and California. With the victory of the U.S. forces over the Mexican in the U.S.-Mexican War, Los Norteamericanos pushed the Texas border down 100 miles from El No Nueces to El No Grande. South Texas ceased to be part of the Mexican state of Tamaulipas. Separated from Mexico, the native Mexican Texan no longer looked toward Mexico as home. The Southwest became our homeland once more. The border fence that divides the Mexican people was born on February 2nd, 1848, with the signing of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. It left 100,000 Mexican citizens on this side, annexed by conquest, along with the land. The land established by the treaty as belonging to the Mexicans was soon swindled away from its owners. The treaty was never honored, and restitution to this day has never been made. Here's something written by William H. Wharton. That is Wharton. The justice and benevolence of God will forbid that Texas should again become a howling wilderness, trod only by savages, or benighted by the ignorance and superstition, the anarchy and rapine of Mexican misrule. The Anglo-American race are destined to be forever the proprietors of this land of promise and fulfillment. Their laws will govern it. Their learning will enlighten it. Their enterprise will improve it. Their flocks range its boundless pastures. For them, it is fertile lands will yield luxuriant harvests. The wilderness of Texas has been redeemed by Anglo-American blood and enterprise. William H. Wharton. The gringo, locked into the fiction of white superiority, seized complete political power, stripping Indians and Mexicans of their land while their feet were still rooted in it. Con el destro. We were jerked out by the roots, truncated, disemboweled, dispossessed, and separated from our identity and our history. Many under the threat of Anglo-terrorism, our identity and our history. Many under the threat. Wait a minute. We were jerked out by the roots, truncated, disemboweled, dispossessed, and separated from our identity and our history. Many, under the threat of Anglo-terrorism, abandoned homes and ranches and went to Mexico. Some stayed and protested, but as the courts, law enforcement officials, and government officials not only ignored their pleas, but penalized them for their efforts. Tejanos had no other recourse but armed retaliation. After Mexican-American resistors robbed a train in Brownsville, Texas, on October 18, 1915, Anglo vigilante groups began lynching Chicanos. Texas Rangers would take them into the brush and shoot them. 100 Chicanos were killed in a matter of months. Whole families lynched. 7,000 fled to Mexico, leaving their small ranches and farms. The Anglos, afraid that the Mexicanos would seek independence from the U.S., brought in 20,000 Army troops to put an end to the social protest movement in South Texas. Race hatred had finally fomented into an all-out war. Here's a little quote. My grandmother lost all her cattle. They stole her land. Here's some more quoting. Got a lot of words here. Drought hit South Texas, my mother tells me. La tierra se puso bien. Mi papa si murió de un heart attack, dejando a mama pregnant, con 8 kids and 1 on the way. Next year, the drought continued. Got hoof and mouth, si cadron, in droves in La Pasta y La Brushland, panzas blancas ballooning in the sky. El segundo año still no rain. Mi pobre madre vivir para 2/3 of her. Another, a smart Gabancho lawyer took the land away. Mama hadn't paid taxes. No habla inglés. She didn't know how to ask for time to raise the money. My father's money, Mama Loca, also lost her terreno. For a while, we got $12.50 a year for the mineral rights of 6 acres of cemetery, all that was left of the ancestral lands. Mama Loca had asked that we bury her there beside her husband. El cementerio estaba cercando. But there was a fence around the cemetery, chained and padlocked by the ranch owners of the surrounding land. We couldn't even get in to visit the graves, much less bury her there. Today it is still padlocked. The sign reads, "Keep out. Trespassers will be shot." In the 1930s, after Anglo agribusiness corporations cheated the small Chicano landowners out of their land, the corporations hired gangs of Mexicanos to pull out the brush, chaparral the cactus, and to irrigate the desert. The land they toiled over had once belonged to many of them, or had been used communally by them. Later, the Anglos brought in huge machines and root plows and had the Mexicans scrape the land clean of natural vegetation. In my childhood, I saw the end of dryland farming. I witnessed the land cleared, saw the huge pipes connected to underwater sources sticking up in the air. As children, we'd go fishing in some of those canals when they were full and hunt for snakes in them when they were dry. In the 1950s, I saw the land cut up into thousands of neat rectangles and squares, constantly being irrigated in the 340-day grow season. The seeds of any kind of fruit or vegetable had only to be stuck in the ground in order to grow. More big land corporations came in and bought up the remaining land. To make a living, my father became a sharecropper. Rio Farms Incorporated loaned him seed money and living expenses. At harvest time, my father repaid the loan and forked over 40% of the earnings. Sometimes we earned less than what we owed, but always the corporations fared well. Some had major holdings in vegetable trucking, livestock auctions, and cotton gins. Altogether, we lived on 3 successive Rio farms. The second was adjacent to the King Ranch and included a dairy farm. The third was a chicken farm. I remember the white feathers of 3,000 leghorn chickens blanketing the land for acres around. My sister and mother and I cleaned, weighed, and packaged eggs. For years afterwards, I couldn't stomach the sight of an egg. I remember my mother attending some of the meetings sponsored by well-meaning whites from Rio Farms. They talked about good nutrition, health, and held huge barbecues. The only thing salvaged for my family from those years are modern techniques of food canning and a food-stained book they printed made up of recipes from Rio Farms' Mexican women. How proud my mother was to have her recipe for enchiladas coloradas in a book. El Cruzar del Mojado, illegal crossing. Ay, si ya tengo una tumba para these countries. Upon being reunited with her unknown mother just before the mother dies. From Ismael Rodriguez film, Nosotros los Pobres. La Crisis. Los Gringos had not stopped at the border. By the end of the 19th century, powerful landowners in Mexico, in partnership with U.S. colonizing companies, had dispossessed millions of Indians of their land. Currently, Mexico and her 80 million citizens are almost completely dependent on the U.S. market. Mexican government and wealthy growers are in partnership with such American conglomerates as American Motors, ITNT, and DuPont, which owns factories called maquiladores. 1/4 of all Mexicans work at maquiladores. Most are young women. Next to oil, maquiladoras are Mexico's second greatest source of U.S. dollars. Working 8 to 12 hours a day to wire in backup lights of U.S. autos or soldier minuscule wires in TV sets is not the Mexican way. While the women are in the maquiladoras, the children are left on their own. Many roam the street, become part of cholo gangs. The infusion of the values of the white culture, coupled with the exploitation by that culture, is changing the Mexican way of life. A few pages to go, my loves. The devaluation of the peso and Mexico's dependency on the U.S. have brought on what the Mexicans call la crisis. No hay trabajo. Half of the Mexican people are unemployed. In the U.S., a man or woman can make 8 times what they can in Mexico. By March 1987, 1,088 pesos were worth $1 U.S. dollar. I remember when I was growing up in Texas, how we'd cross the border at Reynosa or Progreso to buy sugar or medicines when the dollar was worth 8 pesos and 50 centavos. La Travesía. For many Mexicanos del otro lado, the choice is to stay in Mexico and starve, or move north and live. Dicen que cada mexicano siempre es una de la conquista en los brazos de gringas rubias de Estados Unidos. Wow, I hadn't seen that in a hot minute. En cada Chicana y Mexicana vive la north. North Americans call this return to the homeland the silent invasion. A la que volvieron Amalia. South of the border, called North America's rubbish dump by Chicanos, Mexicanos congregate in the plazas to talk about the best way to cross. Smugglers, coyotes, pasadores, enganchadores approach these people or are sought out by them. Que dice muchachos in la Garza de Mojado? Now among the alien gods with weapons of magic am I. Navajo protection song sung when going into battle. I'm gonna try that again. The geese are being interesting. They're like getting all nestled in the grass. Again, they're really upset with this one. He's just not acting right. I don't know what he's done to upset everyone, but you got a band on your leg. Oh. It's like, I didn't do it, people. Well, that sucks. Sorry about that little side step there. That one has a silver band. He's wearing a bracelet, and they don't like that, apparently. 3 of them. I refer to them as sentinels. I mean, they don't know that because they're just over there not paying any attention. They like being read to. Canadian geese specifically like it when I read to them. They've inched a lot closer. They're not very far. But I don't know. I'm not saying all Canadian geese, but the ones where I go and that see me regularly. I hope that doesn't mean anything other than it's precious, because it feels precious when I look up and I got a little audience of birds. Brings me a great deal of joy. All right, let me have a drink here. A little sip. Okay. Now, among the alien gods with weapons of magic am I. Navajo protection song sung when going into battle. We have a tradition of migration, a tradition of long walks. Today we are witnessing la migración de los pueblos mexicanos, the return, odyssey, to the historical, mythical Azatlan. This time the traffic is from south to north. El Retorno, to the promised land, first began with the Indians from the interior of Mexico and the mestizos that came with the conquistadors in the 1500s. Immigration continued in the next 3 centuries, and in this century it continued with the braceros, who helped to build our railroads and who picked our fruit. Today, thousands of Mexicans are crossing the border legally and illegally. 10 million people without documents have returned to the Southwest. Faceless, nameless, invisible, taunted with, "Hey, cucaracha," which means cockroach, trembling with fear, yet filled with courage, the courage born of desperation. Barefoot and uneducated, Mexicans, with hands like boot soles, gather at night by the river where 2 worlds merge, creating what Reagan calls a front line, a war zone. The convergence has created a shock culture, a border culture, a third country, a closed country. Without benefit of bridges, the mojados, wetbacks, float on inflatable rafts across El Rio Grande, or wade or swim across naked, clutching their clothes over their heads. Holding on to the grass, they pull themselves along the banks with a prayer to Virgin de Guadalupe on their lips. Ay, Virgencita Morena, mi madrecita, dame tu benedición. The Border Patrol hides behind the local McDonald's on the outskirts of Brownsville, Texas, or some other border town. They set traps around the riverbeds beneath the bridge. Hunters in army green uniforms stalk and track these economic refugees by the powerful night vision of electronic sensing devices planted in the ground or mounted on Border Patrol vans, cornered by flashlights, frisked while their arms stretch over their heads. Los Mojados are handcuffed, locked in jeeps, and then kicked back across the border. 1 out of every 3 is caught. Some return to enact their rite of passage as many as 3 times a day. Some of those who make it across undetected fall prey to Mexican robbers, such as those in Smuggler's Canyon on the American side of the border near Tijuana. As refugees in a homeland that does not want them, many find a welcome hand holding out only suffering, pain, and ignoble death. Those who make it past the checking points of the Border Patrol find themselves in the midst of 150 years of racism in Chicano barrios in the Southwest and in big northern cities, living in a no-man's borderland, caught between being treated as criminals and being able to eat, between resistance and deportation. The illegal refugees are some of the poorest and the most exploited of any people in the U.S. It is illegal for Mexicans to work without green cards. But big farming combines, farm bosses, and smugglers who bring them in money, making off the natives' labor. They don't have to pay federal minimum wages or ensure adequate housing or sanitary conditions. The Mexican woman is especially at risk. Often the coyote, the smuggler, doesn't feed her for days or let her go to the bathroom. Often he sexually assaults her or sells her into prostitution. She cannot call on county or state health or economic resources because she doesn't know English and she fears deportation. American employers are quick to take advantage of her helplessness. She can't go home. She sold her house, her furniture, borrowed from friends in order to pay the coyote, who charges her $4,000 or $5,000 to smuggle her to Chicago. She may work as a live-in maid for white, Chicano, or Latino households for as little as $15 a week, or work in the garment industry, do hotel work, isolated and worried about her family back home, afraid of getting caught and deported, living with as many as 15 people in one room. The Mexicana suffers serious health problems. Se enferma de las neurosis de alta presión. La mojada, la mujer indocumentada, is doubly threatened in this country. Not only does she have to contend with sexual violence, but like all women, she is prey to a sense of physical helplessness. As a refugee, she leaves the familiar and safe home ground to venture into unknown and possibly dangerous terrain. This is her home, this thin edge of barbed wire. La conciencia de la mezza. Toward a new consciousness. Por la mujer de mi raza. Hablar en espíritu. Hang on. I gotta resituate myself into a different uncomfortable position. It can be a certain amount of uncomfortable. Get too uncomfortable, I'll fall right to sleep. Alright, here we go. We got about 3 pages to go, but I know that my phone's getting hot. So if I lose you, it doesn't mean I did it on purpose. I appreciate you. But here we go. Jose Vasconcelos, Mexican philosopher, envisaged una raza mezza, una mezcla de razas afines, una raza de color. La primera raza sintesa de globo. He called it a cosmic race. La raza cosmica. Anyway, a fifth race embracing the 4 major races of the world. Opposite to the theory of the pure Aryan and to the policy of racial purity that white Americans practices, his theory is one of inclusivity. At the confluence of 2 or more genetic streams, with chromosomes constantly crossing over, the mixture of races, rather than resulting in an inferior being, provides hybrid progeny, a mutable, more malleable species with a rich gene pool. From this racial, ideological, cultural, and biological cross-pollination, an alien consciousness is presently in the making. A new mezza consciousness, una conciencia de mujer. It is a consciousness of the borderlands. Again, this is mixed language, and obviously I did not pre-read this, and I did not know I needed to warm my mouth up for Spanish, so I do apologize for butchering the heck fire out of it, but I thanks for letting me, thanks for being here. Here we go again. A struggle of borders. Because I, a mezza, continually walk out of one culture and into another, because I am in all cultures at the same time. Alma entre dos mundos, 3, 4. Mi zumba la cabeza con la contradictorio. Estoy norteada por todos lados, con mi hablan simultaneamente. Oh, okay, I see now. That was English, then Spanish. Because I, a mezza, continually walk out of one culture and into another, because I am in all cultures at the same time. The ambivalence from this clash of voices results in mental and emotional states of perplexity. Internal strife results in insecurity and indecisiveness. The mezza's dual or multiple personality is plagued by psychic restlessness. In a constant state of mental nepotism, an Aztec word meaning torn between ways, la mezza, is a product of the transfer of the cultural and spiritual values of one group to another. Being tricultural, monolingual, bilingual, or multilingual, speaking at petos, and in a state of perpetual transition, the mezza faces the dilemma of the mixed breed, which collectively does the daughter of a dark-skinned mother listen to. Which collectivity does the daughter of a dark-skinned mother listen to? Cradled in one culture, sandwiched between two cultures, straddling all three cultures and their value systems, La Metza undergoes a struggle of flesh, a struggle of borders, an inner war. Like all people, we perceive the version of reality that our culture communicates. Like others having or living in more than one culture, we get multiple, often opposing messages. The coming together of two consistent but habitually incompatible frames of reference causes un choque, a cultural collision. Within us and within La Cultural Chicana, commonly held beliefs of the white culture attack commonly held beliefs of the Mexican culture, and both attack commonly held beliefs of the indigenous culture. Subconsciously, we see an attack on ourselves and our beliefs as a threat, and we attempt to block with a counterstance. But it is not enough to stand on the opposite riverbank, shouting questions, challenging patriarchal white conventions. The counterstance locks one into a duel of oppressor and oppressed, locked in mortal combat like the cop and the criminal. Both are reduced to a common denominator of violence. The counterstance refutes the dominant culture's view and beliefs, and for this it is proudly defiant. All reaction is limited by and dependent on what it is reacting against, because the counterstance stems from a problem with authority, outer as well as inner. It's a step towards liberation from cultural domination, but it is not a way of life. At some point on our way to a new consciousness, we will have to leave the opposite bank, the split between the two mortal combatants, somehow healed so that we are on both shores at once, and at once see through serpent and eagle eyes. Or perhaps we will decide to disengage from the dominant culture, write it off altogether as lost cause, and cross the border into a wholly new and separate territory. Or we might go another route. The possibilities are numerous once we decide to act and not react. Here's the last section. Again, I'm afraid I'm gonna lose you. I mean, not like shaking afraid or anything, just like it's a lot of the word, I might lose you. So let's hope that I can do this. Stay with me. And if I lose you, thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you for being with me. A tolerance for ambiguity. These numerous possibilities leave La Metza floundering in uncharted seas. In perceiving conflicting information and points of view, she is subjected to a swapping of her psychological borders. She has discovered that she can't hold concepts or ideas in rigid boundaries. The borders and walls that are supposed to keep the undesirable ideas out are entrenched habits and patterns of behavior. These habits and patterns are the enemy within. Rigidity means death. Only by remaining flexible is she able to stretch the psyche, horizontally and vertically. La Metza constantly has to shift out of habitual formations, from convergent thinking, analytical reasoning that tends to use rationality to move toward a single goal, a Western mode, to divergent thinking, characterized by movement away from set pattern and goals and toward a more whole perspective, one that includes rather than excludes. The new Metza copes by developing a tolerance for contradictions, a tolerance for ambiguity. She learns to be an Indian in Mexican culture, to be Mexican from an Anglo point of view. She learns to juggle cultures. She has a plural personality. She operates in a pluralistic mode. Nothing is thrust out, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Nothing rejected. Nothing abandoned. Not only does she sustain contradictions, she turns the ambivalence into something else. She can be jarred out of ambivalence by an intense and often painful emotional event which inverts or resolves the ambivalence. I'm not sure exactly how. The work takes place underground, subconsciously. It is work that the soul performs. That focal point or fulcrum, that juncture where the Metza stands, is where phenomena tend to collide. It is where the possibility of uniting all that is separate occurs. This assembly is not one where severed or separated pieces merely come together, nor is it a balancing of opposing powers. In attempting to work out a synthesis, the self has added a third element, which is greater than the sum of its severed parts. The third element is a new consciousness, the Metza consciousness. And though it is a source of intense pain, its energy comes from continual creative motion that keeps breaking down the unitary aspect of each new paradigm. In unas pocas centurias, the future will belong to the Metza, because the future depends on the breaking down of paradigms. It depends on the straddling of two or more cultures by creating a new mythos. That is a change in the way we perceive reality, the way we see ourselves, the ways we behave. La Metza creates a new consciousness. The work of Metza consciousness is to break down the subject-object duality that keeps her a prisoner, and to show in the flesh and through the images in her work how duality is transcended. The answer to the problem between the white race and the colored, between males and females, lies in healing the split that originates in the very foundation of our lives, our culture, our languages, our thoughts. A massive uprooting of dualistic thinking in the individual and collective consciousness is the beginning of a long struggle, but one that could, in our best hopes, bring us to the end of sexual assault, of violence, and of war. The crossroads. A chicken is being sacrificed at a crossroads, a simple mound of earth, a mud shrine for Eshu, Yoruba, god of indeterminacy, who blesses her choice of path, she begins her journey. La Metza has gone from being the sacrificial goat to becoming the officiating priestess at the crossroads. Maybe 10 more minutes. As a Metza, I have no country. My homeland cast me out. Yet all countries are mine because I am every woman's sister or potential lover. As a lesbian, I have no race. My own people disclaim me, but I am all races because there is the queer of me in all races. I am cultureless because as a feminist of Indo-Hispanics and Anglos, yet I am cultured because I am participating in the creation of yet another culture. A new story to explain the world and our participation in it. A new value system with images and symbols that connect us to each other and to the planet. Soy un amasamento. I am an act of needing, K-N-E-A-D, needing, of uniting and joining, and not only has produced both a creature of darkness and a creature of light, but also a creature that questions the definitions of light and dark and gives them new meanings. We are the people who leap in the dark. We are the people on the knees of the gods in our very flesh. Revolution, evolution works out the clash of cultures. It makes us crazy constantly. But if the center holds, we've made some kind of evolutionary step forward. Nuestra alma el trabajo. The opus, the great alchemical work, spiritual Metzhage. A morphogenesis, an inevitable unfolding. We have become the quickening serpent movement. We have become the quickening serpent movement. Oh, Lordy, Lord. Whew. That was a lot of words. I'm not even done yet. Got a whole nother page to go. Whew. Here we go. Indigenous, like corn. Like corn, the Metza is a product of crossbreeding, designed for preservation under a variety of conditions. Like an ear of corn, a female seed-bearing organ, the Metza, is tenacious, tightly wrapped in the husks of her culture. Like kernels, she clings to the cob. With thick stalks and strong brace roots, she holds tight to the earth. She will survive the crossroads. She steeps the corn in lime. It swells, softens. With stone roller on metat, she grinds the corn, then grinds again. She kneads and molds the dough, pats the round balls into tortillas. We are the porous rock in the stone metet, squatting on the ground. We are the rolling pin, el maíz la masa harina. We are the comal, sizzling hot, the hot tortilla, the hungry mouth. We are the coarse rock. We are the grinding motion, the mixing potion. We are the pestle, a camino, a pimenta. We are the chili colorado, the green shoot that cracks the rock. We will abide. And the last part here, the Metza way. Caught between the sudden contradiction, the breath sucked in and the endless space, the brown woman stands still, looks at the sky. She decides to go down, digging her way along the roots of trees, sifting through the bones. She shakes them to see if there is any marrow in them. Then, touching the dirt to her forehead, to her tongue, she takes a few bones, leaves the rest in their burial place. She goes through her backpack, keeps her journal and address book, throws away the mini BART metro maps. The coins are heavy and they go next. Then the greenbacks flutter through the air. Oh, she keeps her knife, can opener, and eyebrow pencil. She puts bones, pieces of bark, herbas, eagle feather, snake skin, tape recorder, the rattle and drum in her pack, and she sets out to become the complete Tolteca. Her first steps is to take inventory. Just what did she inherit from her ancestors? This weight on her back, which is the baggage from the Indian mother, which the baggage from the Spanish father, which the baggage from the Anglo. Pero es difícil. Differentiating between la herdado, la recordado. She puts history through a sieve, winnows out the lies, looks at the forces that we as a race, as women, have been a part of. This step is a conscious rupture with all oppressive traditions of all cultures and religions. She communicates that rupture, documents the struggle. She reinterprets history, and using new symbols, she shapes new myths. She adopts new perspectives toward the dark-skinned woman and queers. She strengthens her tolerance and intolerance for ambiguity. She is willing to share, to make herself vulnerable to foreign ways of seeing and thinking. She surrenders all notions of safety, of the familiar. Deconstruct, construct. She becomes a Nahal, able to transform herself into a tree, a coyote, into another person. She learns to transform the small I into the total self. And that is the end of that. For further readings, it's Alma M. Garcia, The Development of Chicana Feminist Discourse. From different shores, perspectives on race. Well. Here's a picture of our book. Try to keep my unlovely fingernails out of that. Thank you for being with me today, letting me read. I believe there's one more worth of reading, and I think we may be done. I appreciate you.